What it do, cuckolds? It's still Friday night. The hater went outside to pick up his food, decided to smoke a cigarette, and here I am where I belong, outside. Hater outdoors! It's time for another video. This video was basically influenced by what I saw on SmackDown and by a comment which I have pinned on my SmackDown review that basically says, whatever happened to the rule of defending the title every 30 days or being stripped? You know? Now, the hater also wants to address one quick thing. The hater has been seeing a lot of video requests, and the hater will do his best to get to them, obviously prioritizing the paid requests that I have gotten. Now, everything else I will get to eventually, but some of the requests are just more difficult than others. So one of you requested that I do a 25 list, a top 25 haters' favorite wrestlers list, right? Now, that's a video that I think is a great idea, and I look forward to doing it. However, I need to put some thought into who these 25 are, right? Because if I start now, you know what I mean? And that's a video that I can't do in one take like I'm doing here. I mean, it'll be one take, but I have to write it down so I know who's who and I don't forget, and I have to think about it. It's not like these videos where I just hit record and here we are, cuckolds. But anyways, let's not worry about that right now. Keep putting in your video requests. I will get to them as soon as I can. But the real crux of the matter today is, as the title of this video says, that Cody Rhodes is the worst champion of all time. Now, obviously, I'm talking about two things. Number one, the WWE title, right? We're not concerned with BS titles, right? There's only one title that matters, and that's the WWE title, as well as the former World Heavyweight title, right? The Universal title, the new World Heavyweight title, the NXT title, the Crown Stool title that they're gonna have. None of these things matter, right? The Intercontinental title, the US title, nobody cares about these titles for real. We're talking about the two titles that matter. And clearly, basically every World Heavyweight Champion was better than Cody is today. Now, another thing that I want to point out, obviously we're not counting certain reigns. Like, I'm not going to count the Vince Russo, the Vince McMahon, the David Arquette reigns, right? These are comedy reigns. These are throwaway reigns, right? I'm also not counting, like, bullshit reigns that, like, lasted one day, like Kane's title run, Christian's first title run, like all these other things that don't count, right? We're talking about serious title runs here. You know what I mean? And of those title runs, Cody Rhodes is the worst, and Cody Rhodes is the worst champion of all time. Now, here's why that is, right? And as usual, the hater is going to give you the facts. The hater doesn't just throw an opinion and then just leave it at that. The hater supports his opinions with factual evidence, cuckolds, factual evidence. So here's some factual evidence, right? The entire Cody Rhodes title run was essentially predicated upon the notion that people like Roman Reigns are part-time nobodies, and they're essentially holding the title and, by extension, the company hostage, right? That Roman Reigns shows up whenever he wants to, and therefore the title theoretically loses prestige, right? This was the entire logic behind introducing the new version of the World Heavyweight title. The entire point was, hey, we need a champion. The other champion isn't around. So here's the new title, right? And Seth Rollins' title reign was essentially based upon that. The whole point was Seth Rollins is going to defend this title as often as he can. And while he did this, at the end, when it mattered the most, he dropped the ball, right? He was out for like 2 months before WrestleMania, and the title didn't get defended. You know, and it's too close to WrestleMania to strip him of it. You know what I mean? So they had to go and turn that title into a bullshit title. Subsequently, the title eventually went to Gunther. Yes, I know that Drew McIntyre had it for 3 minutes and that Damian Priest had it for a while too. But nobody cares about that. Those guys didn't defend it either. But the current title reign of Gunther, the title is exactly the same as the WWE title, meaning that it's not defended at all. Now, why is Gunther not a worse champion than Cody? Well, two reasons. Number one, I feel like he defends it more frequently. Number one. Two, his title run is much more recent. And three, it's not a real world title. So there you have it. So now that we got that bullshit out of the way, let's get to the second reason why Cody Rhodes' title run, and therefore Cody Rhodes himself, suck ass and are the worst. Okay, the suit promos and ridiculous appearances that lead to nothing, right? The idea that Cody Rhodes is there every week can be based upon the fact that, yes, most weeks, one way or another, he does make a presence, right? He does make an appearance of some sort, right? Typically, this involves one of two things. Either being in the ring in a suit and cutting a promo or signing a contract, or doing nothing like he did this Friday in a suit, right? Just going there, just saying nothing, accomplishing nothing, contributing nothing, and then being there. So it's not just the fact that Cody Rhodes doesn't defend the title, right? Which is unforgivable, right? At some pay-per-views, like the last pay-per-view at Bad Blood, Cody Rhodes is the world champion. He's not defending the title. The title should have been on the line. We've seen this before. We've seen titles be on the line in tag team matches, right? We've seen people win the title like that. You know what I mean? Now, obviously, Cody Rhodes should win, and, you know, it is what it is, right? I'm not saying he should have lost the title, but the title should just be on the line. But because nobody cares about the title, the bigger story here is the Ula Fala, symbolically, and the feud between Roman Reigns and, I suppose you could say, Solo Sikoa, but it really just is the reintroduction of Roman Reigns. Like, nobody gives a shit about the other side of the feud, right? And obviously the biggest pop was The Rock. So there's also that. But considering these two factors, I don't think there's any doubt that Cody Rhodes is the absolute worst champion of all time. Now, the third and arguably most important reason is that Cody Rhodes, irrespective of everything I just said, independent of everything I just said, he also sucks, right? That's a big one. Now, Cody Rhodes is a capable wrestler. He's got a lot of the qualities that would normally be required to be a world champion. However, Cody Rhodes, as an individual and as a character on our TV screen, has been compromised far too much. And at this point, it is not believable for Cody Rhodes to be the world champion, right? What is it that happened? Cody Rhodes left the WWE and then he got better at wrestling outside of the WWE? This undermines the entire construct of the WWE. The entire premise of the WWE is that the WWE is by far the #1 wrestling promotion. And as a result of that, the logic is that every wrestler in WWE is superior to every wrestler elsewhere. You understand what I'm saying? So in other words, why is Tozawa hired by WWE and why isn't, I don't know, Jack Perry hired by WWE, right? The underlying premise of the show would suggest that Tozawa is superior to Jack Perry, and that's why Jack Perry's in the Independents, and that's why Tozawa is on Monday Night Raw. Now, in the greater wrestling universe, we all know that that's not the case. Like, we all know, for example, that Jericho, MJF, Jack Perry, even Darby Allin, you know, Daniel Bryan, Jon Moxley, that these guys are supposed to be superior to the jobbers like Tozawa, right? But that doesn't change anything. The idea is that when these wrestlers come to WWE, right, and everyone that I mentioned basically that's worth anything is a former WWE guy, right? So they get their prestige from the fact that Jon Moxley and Daniel Bryan were WWE champions. So when they go to AEW, you don't need to explain to anybody why it is that, you know, Eddie Kingston can't beat Daniel Bryan, let's say, right? Because Daniel Bryan is a WWE guy and he was a champion there, and Eddie Kingston is a indie guy through and through. So with that being said, the opposite had never happened until recently, right? This weird thing happened where people like Drew McIntyre, Cody Rhodes, either would get fired or would leave because they're jobbers, and then they'd get rehired again. Jinder Mahal too, I like him, but the fact remains, right? They would get rehired again, and inexplicably, now they're back and they're better, right? Now, with Jinder Mahal, it's not inexplicable at least, right? You look at him when he left, and you look at him when he came back, and you're like, okay, this guy clearly has improved, right? He has improved visually. You can point to him and say, wow, look at him now and look at him back then. And as a result, it's understandable that he would be booked better, right? You can even extend the same argument slightly to Drew McIntyre, right? Boyish Drew McIntyre, who was with 3MB and, you know, who was the chosen one. That guy is a cuck. He's a jobber, right? Masculine and manly Drew McIntyre, who was reintroduced into NXT, makes sense. It's like, all right, this guy's matured, he's put on some muscle, he just looks more grizzled, he has new moves, you know, he has done things clearly that improve who he is. Cody Rhodes, on the other hand, hasn't, right? He's colored his hair and gotten a few tattoos, but that's not enough, right? And some people might say, oh, he's gotten a little bit bigger, but not noticeably so, right? It's not like Cody Rhodes came back as Brock Lesnar or as Jinder Mahal. He's still Cody Rhodes. So the idea is this: why is it that the guy that would get his ass beat by Stephen Amell from Green Arrow or whatever, right? Why is it this guy now can present himself as being an equivalent of sorts to The Rock, one of the greatest wrestlers of all time? You see what I'm saying? It doesn't make sense. It doesn't pass muster. So this, even though they're trying to rehabilitate Cody and present him as a big deal, doesn't work, right? That's why, for example, the return of, let's say, CM Punk has been superior to the return of Andrade, right? Andrade picked up exactly where he left off. He was a mid-card jobber before he left. He was a mid-card jobber in AEW, and he's a mid-card jobber still, right? Why? Because nothing's changed. It's the same Andrade. So why in the blue hell is it that Andrade doesn't improve, right? He left in the Indies too. He didn't improve, but Cody Rhodes improved. You're supposed to accept this as a fact of the matter. Well, people don't accept this as a fact of the matter, which is why Cody Rhodes can only draw like 1.4 million. You see what I'm saying? This is all part of that. Like, you can bet your ass. And people talk about this a lot. They're like, oh, just the wrestling doesn't draw as much anymore. If The Rock came back for 3 months and was on SmackDown every week as the champion, it would jump to 5 million immediately. Like we would see the biggest draws in the history of SmackDown since the Attitude Era. They might even surpass that, right? So this idea that like, oh, it's just the show, the way people watch TV is different, is horseshit. The reality is that the people that they present to us are inferior. And this inferior group of wrestlers is led by Cody Rhodes, right? I don't think anybody serious, I don't think anybody serious would argue against this, right? You know that if The Rock came, let's just say The Rock signed a 2-year deal somehow, right? Where he was wrestling every week, right? Even if he was cutting promos every week, but let's just say he was wrestling and cutting promos. Basically, he was playing the same role that he played from 1999 to 2002, which are his prime years, I would say, right? If he did this, the show would draw like 5 million people easy. Every week it would draw, right? Not only because The Rock is a mega star and a mega celebrity, but because The Rock is mega entertaining and you can't turn away, right? You're like, oh shit, I can watch a bunch of nameless nobodies play Monday Night Football, or I could watch The Rock on Monday Night Raw. I think that a lot of people would watch The Rock on Monday Night Raw. Now, it might take some time to rehabilitate, the lost wrestling crowd, but they would come back because it's The Rock. You could say the same thing about Stone Cold. You could say the same thing about these mega stars, right? In the context of mega stars, there are levels to it too, right? Hulk Hogan, Rock, Stone Cold. If they're wrestling, and the only one of them that can wrestle now is The Rock because he's still in great shape, right? But if those guys were wrestling and doing their thing in their prime, they would draw millions. Then you have like the secondary, the second string, the JV team, right? Which is going to be your Cenas, your Triple H's, your Jerichos, even your Shawn Michaelses. Like there's a difference, right? Cena is a massive star, one of the GOATs, right? But he's not a big draw to the level of Roman Reigns. That goes without saying. Not Roman Reigns. What am I saying? He's better than Roman Reigns, but he's not a draw to the level of The Rock. He just isn't, right? And that's the idea. Cody Rhodes, on the other hand, is not even he's not even in the category of like star, let alone megastar. He is a main event, like a forced main eventer, aka a mid-card jobber nobody that has never drawn a dime. Right? That's what he is. You know what I mean? And this idea that they're paying him like $3 million a year or whatever to do nothing and to get no viewership is preposterous. So let's recap for a second. Cody Rhodes never been a draw. Cody Rhodes spent the vast majority of his career being a massive jobber. Despite the fact that he's won nearly every match since his return and nearly every match in AEW, right? He's wrestled very few times in both, right? Not counting house shows, obviously. Like, who the fuck knows or cares about what happens there, right? I'm talking about TV matches. Despite this, Cody Rhodes easily has like a sub 50 record, 50-50 record in terms of losses, right? It's not even close because he spent so many years being a jobber on TV, wrestling nearly every week, sometimes twice a week, on TV, and even on pay-per-views for a short stint, and losing every match, right? And I would argue that Cody Rhodes is superior to this Cody Rhodes. I would argue that Tozawa, Carmelo Anthony, fucking the Street Profits, DIY, the people that are wrestling consistently are superior. They're carrying on more of the weight of the company. Cody Rhodes is not that guy, right? Wrestling always comes back to this little story, right? No matter where you go, you find your way to this philosophy, right? And the story goes as follows. John Cena sees DX, like old DX, like Triple H and Shawn Michaels in their mid-40s, doing DX shit. And then John Cena says, wow, I'd like to have fun like you guys, right? And Triple H and Shawn Michaels say, Well, we put in the work. You are the guy that's carrying the brand forward now. So you got to show up every week and put in the work, right? And carry the brand. And then later on, if you're lucky, you can be the guy that does this, that goes and has fun. Cena never had that opportunity to go and have fun because he had to fucking carry this company until Roman Reigns turned heel. He had to carry the company for like 5 more years than he should have, until Roman Reigns finally was accepted to a varying degree, right? But Cody Rhodes, he's never done either, right? He hasn't put in the work to carry the company because he's surely not carrying it now. It's being carried by Montez Ford and friends, right? It's being carried by nobodies, And the idea that Cody Rhodes has somehow earned it, and now he can have fun and have this lax part-time schedule, is preposterous, right? You have and I don't care how you spin it, right? I don't care how people want to take this and turn it into something else. The reality is this. Let's take Cody Rhodes and compare him to Rey Mysterio Jr., right? Cody Rhodes, a one-time champion, Rey Mysterio, a multiple-time champion. But that's neither here nor there. Cody Rhodes is like 10 years younger almost than Rey Mysterio. Maybe even more than 10 years younger, right? And Cody Rhodes is the current champion. Why does Rey Mysterio wrestle more? Why is Rey Mysterio, who is a bona fide legend of this business and of this fake sport, why is he out there performing more frequently than Cody? Do you see what I'm saying? Like, Rey Mysterio would make a better champion right now than Cody is. Because Cody doesn't show up. He's not even a part-time wrestler. He is an absentee champion, right? And that's fundamentally what this all comes back to, right? Everything else that I said, the fact that he's a jobber, all these other things, they're all important, but all of these could be overcome with an incredible work ethic that Cody Rhodes just does not have. It's as simple as that. He doesn't have the work ethic that is required to be a star. And as a result, putting all your eggs in the Cody Rhodes basket leads to the current state of WWE where they're struggling to get 1.5 million views. You understand what I'm saying? This is just a fact of life. This cannot be argued otherwise. Now, if Cody Rhodes, let's just say, he comes in, right, because he came in as a part-timer, like from the beginning, right? He comes in, and he wrestles Seth Rollins and beats him at WrestleMania like 3 years ago, whatever, right? And let's just say for a second that Cody Rhodes, injuries do happen. We'll give him some time off for injuries. But let's just say, aside from the injuries, that he wrestled every Monday or every Friday, depending on what show he's on, right? At this point, if he had done that consistently, like if Cody Rhodes had main evented every Monday Night Raw, or, worked his way to the main event and eventually main evented every Monday Night Raw and subsequently every Friday Night SmackDown during his title run. And he defended the title, let's say, every Friday, or if he didn't, he'd be in a tag team match, right? Like a main event tag team match, him versus his challenger, and each one gets a partner. That same formula, right? So it could be like he's wrestling, I don't know, AJ Styles. It could be like AJ Styles and the Good Brothers versus Cody and the Street Profits or something, right? Like if he kept himself active like that, even people like me would have been like, wow, I have to respect it because he is busting his ass, right? Remember when everyone turned on Cena and people pretended that Cena was the worst champion? Well, the hater never really turned on Cena because I appreciated Cena. I understood what he was doing. He can't help it that he has a ceiling. And this is something that I realized very, very early. When I started turning on Cena myself, I'm like, this is goofy. He used to be like this cool rapper guy. Now he's just like, Hulk Hogan light. Right? And then the ratings started going down, and he kept it around like 3.5, 4 million or so, right? And I thought to myself, okay, this is the capacity that Cena has, which is a very commendable capacity to consistently draw 4 million people, 4 million viewers, right? Because nobody was watching because Del Rio was there, you know what I mean? Or because Sheamus was there. They're watching for Cena and Orton and a few other ones, Undertaker, a few other people that are draws, right? Nobody gives a shit, or Big Show, things like that. Like people that actually might make you turn the channel and be like, oh, this is cool. Nobody's watching because Cena is wrestling Dolph Ziggler. You know what I mean? Dolph Ziggler's never drawn a dime in his entire career. This guy's just like a complete degenerate. Like he should have never been a wrestler, but that's neither here nor there. The point I'm trying to make is this. Cena's limit might be 4 million given the circumstances, right? The Rock's limit might be 8 million given the circumstances. Cody Rhodes' limit appears to be around 1.5 million given the circumstances. We have to take the circumstances into account. But the fact of the matter doesn't change at all. We still know what we're watching. And what we're watching is not a bona fide champion. You know what I mean? Cody Rhodes didn't put in the work to be able to coast like this, right? Now, I know what some of you may be thinking. Hater, you always say you don't need to pay your dues. I agree. You don't need to pay your dues if you're good, right? If you're not good, you got to pay your dues. I firmly believe that at some juncture, John Cena understood this. He understood deep down in his heart, right? Cena's very humble. You know what I mean? Like, you hear him talk and you get this sense of humility, right? He understands that he's not The Rock. He understands that he's not Stone Cold. He understands that he's not Undertaker. He probably understands that he's not Kane, right? He is limited in his capacity to do cool things, right? He is limited in that. John Cena is goofy, right? John Cena is a good wrestler, but John Cena should have never been as big of a star as he has been. Let's be honest, right? And I think somewhere down in his soul, he knows this, right? Now, this new current age of wrestlers, right? Most of them don't realize this. So you have people like Austin Aries, Dolph Ziggler, CM Punk, right? These people that really believe, like CM Punk really believes that he's just as good as Stone Cold. Like, that's what I think at least, right? Which is insane. It's like someone should have been like someone should have just told him straight up, dude, you're nowhere close, right? You're nowhere close. So kind of like rein it in a little bit because you're going to ruin everything as he has, right? You're nowhere close. You see what I'm saying? It's not even in the same realm, right? It would be like saying Abyss from TNA is just as good as Kane or The Undertaker. Abyss is one of my favorite TNA wrestlers. But you look at Kane and the position of Kane, you look at Abyss and you're like, one is Kane, one is Abyss, right? You know which one's better just by looking at them, right? Let alone all the cool shit that Kane has done, all the comedy things and all the amazing things that Abyss could ever do. You see what I'm saying? The Daniel Bryans of the world, the John Moxleys, he's a big one, the John Moxleys of the world, the Seth Rollinses of the world. These people really do believe that they're like God's gift to wrestling. It's like they've never drawn a dime collectively, and they think they're hot shit. And Cody Rhodes, even if he is humble deep down inside, right? He's not presented like that. And he doesn't operate like that. So, in summation, the point I'm trying to make about Cena and the point I'm trying to make about Cody in comparison is as follows. John Cena knew his limits, in my opinion. He knew his limits, and he thought to himself, well, I'll never be able to come out there, get a microphone, and get the same reactions as The Rock. I can get good reactions because I'm pretty good at that too, but I'll never be able to get Stone Cold or Rock-like reactions, right? And there's no shame in that, by the way. Like, I'm not trying to shame any of these people, right? These are very, very high standards, right? During the Attitude Era and subsequently, we had wrestlers like, for example, Booker T, who I bring up a lot, right? Booker T in any other era, like Booker T today would be Roman Reigns. You know what I mean? Like, he would be Roman Reigns. Like, Roman Reigns, at most, if he was around like in the Attitude Era or in the Ruthless Aggression Era, his ceiling would be like Booker T. Right? He would not be anything special, but people would respect it. Booker T is a legend, right? If Booker T was around today, he'd be like a 15,000-time world champion, right? But Booker T also, in my opinion, understood that, like, all right, look, I'm great at WCW. I'm underrated. I'm always going to be the underrated guy, but I'm also not The Rock or Stone Cold. Like, he understood this. Cody Rhodes, and you know who else? Like, the ultimate mistake, Triple H. Triple H and Jericho to an extent too, but Triple H, like, he's never had any humility. Like, he really thought that he was as good as The Rock or Triple H, or Stone Cold, I should say, right? He never was, or even Undertaker. He never got those reactions. He never got, like, American badass reactions. He never got Rock, that's not even close, right? Or Hulk Hogan or Stone Cold reactions. He never got these reactions. There was one time when he went against Jericho, right? But Triple H always needed to be with someone significantly smaller or significantly less believable than him to have any kind of reaction. Otherwise, people are going to react for the other guy. And again, no shame, if Triple H was in his prime today, he too would be like a 15,000-time world champion, right? Triple H is better than Roman Reigns and Montez Ford. I think we can all agree, right? But the point I'm trying to make is this. John Cena, going back to him real quick, he understood that he is not Stone Cold, and he's not The Rock, and he's not Hogan. Let's leave it at those three guys. Those are the three guys, right? Those are the three objective best wrestlers, right? Then you have like Ric Flair and people like that, but Ric Flair wasn't drawing 8 million people. You know what I'm saying? Like, let's be honest, right? Dusty Rhodes was drawing like 35 people. Nobody gave a fuck about these guys. Ric Flair was cool, no doubt about it, but I would argue that Ric Flair's best work, realistically, in terms of drawing power, was the late WCW and Evolution. You know what I mean? All the other shit, it's like, yeah, I know. He drew like 60,000 people in Korea, but he wasn't drawing 8 million people on TV every week. Nobody ever tuned into TV with 8 million, 9 million people to watch Ric Flair, but he was still a massive draw. So let's focus on The Rock, Stone Cold, and Hogan, the people that did draw these big-ass numbers. Now, if we have these three guys, right, it's understandable, right? It's understandable if The Rock, at that point or this point, or whenever in his career, or Stone Cold or Hogan, it's understandable if Hulk Hogan was like, yeah, you know what, I'm gonna wrestle twice a year because I'm fucking Hulk Hogan, right? And then people would have no choice but to bend and say, okay, I got it. Like, you're Hulk Hogan, like, please wrestle when you want, right? Because, we know it's gonna be big money, right? It's the same thing with other sports, right? Like in the UFC, you have people that fight once a year. Like Conor McGregor is a good example, right? Conor McGregor hasn't had a win in like 6 years, right? But he's still a massive draw. So he can do whatever the fuck he wants. He's gonna fight when he wants to fight, right? Other people don't have this luxury because they're not Conor McGregor, right? Like John Jones, Islam Makhachev, these guys don't have the same luxury. They're never gonna draw as much money as Conor McGregor. It's never gonna happen. It's not in the cards, cucks. So that's the idea. Now, what did John Cena do when he realized this? He overcompensated by going out and wrestling every week for like 15 years, right? And that's why a lot of fans came around and they started respecting John Cena, right? He would also put this over in his promos. He'd be like, you can boo me if you want, you can like me if you want, Jack, but one thing you can't deny is that Cena's here every week in front of you, right? Which is true. And people were like, yeah, he is. Hold on a second. Fuck, at the very least, I can reliably expect Cena to defend his title every pay-per-view. I can reliably expect Cena to have a presence and likely a match on every episode of Raw for like 10 years straight, right? John Cena understood, I can never out-rock The Rock. I can never out-Austin, right? But I can outwork them, right? The Rock and Austin, especially The Rock, who had a very brief career, right? Like The Rock is probably the best wrestler of all time, just by the amount of impact that he's made in like essentially what amounts to like a 5-year career. Right? He was there for 5 years and he's an icon, right? And there's people that are like, Dolph Ziggler's like, I've been here 20 years. Yeah, and nobody's given a fuck, right? You've been here 20 years and The Rock has done more in one night than you'll ever do in 20 years, right? He's drawn more money in one night than you've drawn in 20 years of your career. Your career is equal to 1 day of The Rock, right? And that's the problem. The problem is, yeah, it's fine. And even The Rock and Stone Cold wrestled every week, right? Especially The Rock. Wrestle all the time, right? Now, imagine if they said, I don't want to wrestle. People would be like, okay, I get it. You're The Rock, you're Stone Cold. Cena, on the other hand, can't do that. If Cena stops wrestling, then Randy Orton might overtake him because Randy Orton also wrestled every week, right? John Cena's just more charismatic, so he got the rub instead of Orton. But Orton would have overtaken him because they're both wrestling every week. Like if Orton was in his prime right now, you know what I mean? When he was like young and like bald Randy Orton, right? It's like Roman Reigns would never see the world title. I mean, it would just be Randy Orton having like a 4-year title reign, right? But he understood. Orton Cena understood. I have to work much harder because I don't have the attributes of these champions. Cody Rhodes, on the other hand, doesn't have even the attributes of Cena and Orton, right? He doesn't even have those attributes, and he still works less than these motherfuckers, right? Basically, he has the talent level. Cody Rhodes has the talent level of like an MVP, like I might even elevate him to like, he's not as good as The Miz. Like The Miz is better than him. He's more believable. He's better on the mic. He's more charismatic. But let's just elevate him to the level of The Miz. He has like the capacity of The Miz, but he works as hard as Hulk Hogan when he was in his 40s. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't add up, motherfuckers. It doesn't add up. The Miz busts his ass, right? Whenever they give him a chance, he's busting his ass for like 20 years. You know, Dolph Ziggler, who in other situations, if Dolph Ziggler didn't want to work as much as he did, Dolph Ziggler would literally be like a Chad Gable, right? He never would have been a world champion. He would be a Chad Gable. That's like Dolph Ziggler's like his abilities are Chad Gable. That's where he should end. But because he consistently went out there and performed, he was able to earn a few title runs. Like Christian, Mark Henry, all these guys, who some of them I love very dearly. They're some of my favorite wrestlers, but they understood, right? They understood, except for Christian, which is obviously a missed opportunity. But everybody else understood, I have to wrestle every week to maintain my spot. Cody Rhodes is like, oh, I don't have to wrestle every week. They just give me my spot because, I mean, to his credit, I guess it's like, you don't have to wrestle every week because there's no worry. Like, you know what I mean? Like, Cody Rhodes isn't worried that Andrade and like Montez Ford and, you know, Johnny Gargano are going to take his spot because he's better than those guys. You know what I mean? But you understand what I'm getting at, right? He's better than them in terms of presentation, but like those guys deserve his spot more. But anyways, it's neither here nor there. It's not about deserving it. The point is, this lack of humility that you see in people like Cody Rhodes is the problem, right? The problem is that he doesn't feel, just like Roman Reigns, right? He doesn't feel that he needs to be there every week. He doesn't feel like he needs to do that to stay over, right? And the bigger problem is that the Triple H's of the world have, for some reason, acquiesced to this. Like, Triple H doesn't have the Vince McMahon killer instinct, right? Vince McMahon will be like, oh, word? Stone Cold doesn't want to do exactly what I say? I guess we have to part ways, right? And then he would come out the next day and say, no man, no one man or one woman is bigger than the WWE, right? Remember that promo where Stone Cold quit? And he was like, Stone Cold quit on me, and he quit on all of you. He like buried him, basically, right? And he was like, and then the next night, right, or maybe even that night, he was like, we need ruthless aggression. Immediately, Vince McMahon jumped on the idea of like, we need to make some new stars, right? We've lost everybody. We've lost Stone Cold. We've lost Goldberg. We've lost Brock Lesnar. We've lost The Rock. Literally like 4 of the biggest wrestling stars of all time. We've lost them all in like 3 months, right? Shit. Who do I have? I have JBL. I have Guerrero. I have Benoit. I have Triple H, thank God, right? I have John Cena. I have Orton. I have, I'm going to make something happen with these guys, right? And immediately he was like, it's time to find a new star. Triple H seems to be too focused on the 1.5 stars that he's got, Roman Reigns and Cody Rhodes. And he just lets them piss on his face. They're like, I'll show up to work whenever the fuck I want. He's like, got it. All right, send in Otis. Otis will carry the show forward. Otis cannot draw 3 million. That's the problem, right? Otis, Montez Ford, Obafemi, Trick Williams, Pete Dunne, these guys that we see on TV all the time can only draw around 1 million. You understand? They are not capable of drawing anything more than that. And then eventually he's like, all right, bring out CM Punk. CM Punk's like, I'm going to have one match, get injured for like 9 months, come back, have another match, and just leave again, right? Nobody wants to actually go to work, right? And it's fine. If you're CM Punk and you're in your late 40s or mid 40s, right? And you're like basically done because it's like, this guy's like broken in half, And kudos to him for that because, he did a Hell in a Cell and things like that. But the idea is CM Punk takes one bad bump, he's out for 10 months. He's like Charlotte Flair. Everything these people do, they're out for like 10 months. They look like my fucking fantasy football team. But the point I'm trying to make is that the other people that aren't injured take note from this and they're like, oh, I'm not going to work hard either because nobody works hard anymore, right? And as a result, we have the situation that we have. But it's one thing. It's one thing for CM Punk to do this. It's one thing for, Drew McIntyre to do this. It's one thing for Brock Lesnar to do this. But when Cody Rhodes does it, when the champion does it, it's inexcusable. And I will finish by saying this. Some people, I don't know how, but they still believe that I'm this like Roman Reigns fanboy. Shame on Roman Reigns for doing the same thing too. Don't get me wrong. This is not just a Cody thing. However, Roman Reigns has better attributes than Cody, so he can elevate himself in other ways, right? He can make himself relevant in other ways. He can draw 2.5 million, almost 3. He's almost as much of a draw as Cena. Cody Rhodes is almost as much of a draw as fucking, who's a rank jobber right now. He's as much of a draw as Santos Escobar, right? But he thinks he's a big deal like Hulk Hogan. You can watch his interview with Chris Van Vliet, right? And he just the way he talks, like he thinks he's a megastar, and he there's this like air of entitlement. Like he thinks that he deserves this because his father was a fat jobber who never drew a dime either. You know what I mean? Oh, Hater, you must have forgotten there was one time in like Athens, Georgia when he drew 5,000. I don't give a fuck. You know what I mean? You know what I mean, right? And also another thing about Cody Rhodes, this whole thing in one of those interviews where he was like, oh, Dusty's kids, like I'm actually Dusty's kids. And he's like, Dusty's helping all these people out. And then the comments and the YouTube video are like, wow, Dusty Rhodes is so awesome because he got all these people over. He made so many stars. What the fuck are you talking about? Are we watching the same thing? Dusty Rhodes didn't make 1 star. The only argument you can make is, all right, he helped Seth Rollins. Everybody else sucks. Dusty Rhodes, the whole Dusty Rhodes NXT experiment has failed colossally. I mean, rest in peace, I respect the man, but he wasn't good at what he did. And people don't want to say these things because the narrative that they feed you is that Dusty Rhodes was this incredible wrestling mind. No, he wasn't. No, the only incredible wrestling mind is Vince McMahon. Everybody else sucks at wrestling. There's like Vince Russo. There's a few other good ones here and there, right? Jim Cornette, I don't like him, but he gets it. You know what I mean? There's a few good wrestling minds. The vast majority of them are complete jobbers. You know what I mean? The vast majority of people in charge don't know what the fuck they're doing, right? It takes very few and a very specific type of individual to understand it, right? Now, the haters never worked for the WWE or any other wrestling promotion. So I know a common criticism might be, Hater, what do you know? These guys, like Shane McMahon grew up in the business. Yeah, he grew up in the business and did nothing with it. You know what I'm saying? Stephanie McMahon grew up in the business. Triple H grew up in the business. And they didn't do anything. Like, they're just failing on all fronts. And people are like, oh, Vince McMahon, like, he wanted to hold on to power for too long. You would too. You would too if the alternative is what we're seeing today. You would want to hold on to that power. You'd be like, clearly everyone around me is a complete incompetent. You know, they're good at their roles maybe, but they're a complete incompetent in the creative, in the vision, right? And Dusty Rhodes, it can also be grouped in with these people, right? NXT has produced one star, and that is Seth Rollins. It's the only one you can make a claim where it's like, oh, okay, this guy went to NXT and he's a star. Everybody else, like, is not a star. Even Drew McIntyre is not a star. Look, just look at a list of the NXT champions and see how many of those guys have been WWE champion and how many of them have remained in the spotlight and in the main event. The only answer is arguably Seth Rollins. Everybody else has failed colossally. Everybody else sucks, right? Gunther is the opening match. He's not, wait a minute, he's not even on the pay-per-view. Gunther's not good enough to even be on the pay-per-view. He's not even good enough to take the spot from Liv Morgan. Gunther is going to wrestle the next week on Raw because nobody's going to fucking tune into the pay-per-view to see Gunther, right? Cody Rhodes is like the fourth guy in a fucking tag team match, right? There's no more stars. And the problem, again, people don't want to say these things, but the reality is that the Dusty Rhodeses of the world are the ones that have pretty much ruined everything, right? The Dusty Rhodeses, the Triple H's, right? They've introduced this entitled mentality of like, I'm already a star because I wrestled in ROH. Nobody gives a fuck, right? Remember Austin Aries? Like, he came, I was like, oh, this guy's gonna flop miserably in WWE because he's like 5'3". So he flops miserably in WWE, and then he's like, they held me down. They didn't give me a push. How can you not find something for Austin Aries? Oh, I can tell you how. You suck ass. That's how, right? Everyone that inflated this guy's ego, like, you know, the Jim Cornettes, like, Jim Cornette gets it, but he's wrong about a lot of things. Like, he's like, oh, FTR is going to be amazing. FTR turns out to be complete jobbers, right? Oh, Austin Theory, if only his like, they tried to like gaslight all of us into thinking that Austin Aries didn't become a megastar because he had backstage problems. Are you fucking insane? He didn't become anything because he's 5'3", 135 pounds, and has zero charisma. That's why he didn't become anything, right? Oh, he had heat backstage. Get the fuck out of here. He had heat backstage. You know what I'm saying? Umaga had heat backstage. He's like accused of rape. You know what I mean? Like, I think not Melina, but the other one, the vampire one. She's like, Umaga tried to rape me. I saw an interview where she said it, right? Everybody knew, but they're like, we're still gonna push him because he might be a draw. You know what I mean? Like, nobody gives a shit if you have heat. You could be a fucking criminal in this business and obviously have success as we've seen many times. Right? You could be a criminal and they'll protect you. Oh, he had heat. Oh, that's what it was. Austin Aries, he didn't get along well with Dolph Ziggler, so as a result, they pushed him down. No, Vince McMahon will be like, I don't give a fuck if you've done, it doesn't matter what you've done. If you're good enough, we're pushing you, right? And, you know, here we are, cucks. Here we are. The consequence of this is the present day landscape of wrestling, right? Where everyone is a massive jobber, nobody cares anymore, right? And nobody shows up to work. Like, there is not one person who's out there, right? Like, remember when CM Punk cut the pipe bomb and he was like, workhorses like Tyson Kidd. There's not, who's the workhorse now? Who's the workhorse? Right? Who is it? No, Carmelo Hayes maybe? He's the only one that wrestles like every week. He's like the only guy that wrestles every week. He should get a push because, you know, at this point, normally I would say, who gives a fuck about the workhorse? But if all you've got is the workhorse and your options are Carmelo Hayes or Cody Rhodes, why can't Carmelo Hayes be champion, but Cody Rhodes can, right? Why? Because Cody Rhodes has a neck tattoo? What the fuck? What makes Cody Rhodes better than Carmelo Hayes? Again, I'm not saying Carmelo Hayes is The Rock, but he's just as, and I'm not even saying he's better than Cody, but he's just as good, and at least he shows up. You see what I'm saying? That's the problem. And I don't want to hear this horseshit. Cody's good at promos. He has a lisp. Like, half the time he stumbles his words. He's not good at promos. Right? Oh, Kevin Owens, this guy's going to kill it on the mic. No, he isn't. No, he isn't, because that shit that works in the indie feds where you make an anime reference and the crowd loses their mind is not going to work in the mainstream audience. Kevin Owens will never be accepted by the mainstream audience because Kevin Owens is a jobber. You see what I'm saying? And that's the same thing with Cody, motherfuckers. Cody Rhodes' reign is by far the worst legitimate world title reign in the history of wrestling. And I don't care what anybody else tells you. This is a fact. Until he proves otherwise, as far as I'm concerned, this entire year, this entire WrestleMania, like post-WrestleMania season, up until Cody drops the title, is meaningless. When Cody Rhodes drops the title, no one's going to want him to win it back again. right? No one's going to be like, oh, they should put the belt back on Cody. Why? Who would want that? You know what I'm saying? At this point, give it to Finn Balor. Give it to someone that wrestles. Give it to someone that's going to wrestle every week, right? But the worst part, and I'm going to end with this, is the dangerous precedent that has been set. And I will concede, it was set by Brock Lesnar. But it was set by Brock Lesnar because Brock Lesnar is Brock Lesnar. Brock Lesnar is a 1 out of a billion. He is an exceptional human being. Brock Lesnar is like one of the biggest draws in the history of anything. He's one of the biggest draws ever, right? Number one. Number two, Brock Lesnar is Brock Lesnar. You can look at him and you can be like, holy shit, I don't even care if this guy draws. This guy could easily murder everyone here in 3 seconds if he wanted to. And I want to hear this bullshit. Oh, Lashley, Goldberg would have. No, Brock Lesnar would eat everyone in WWE history except for maybe the Big Show, Omos, he'd probably destroy Omos because Omos is a little too lanky. But Big Show, Kane, there's Jack Swagger might have a small chance. You know what I mean? There's Lashley might have a small chance because he's also an MMA guy. But realistically, Brock Lesnar kills all these guys. Even Big Show, he would have a good shot against, right? Braun Strowman. There's a few of these big motherfuckers that you're like, all right, there's a point where size kind of takes over. But you understand what I'm getting at? Brock Lesnar is legit. He's a former UFC champion. There's so many reasons why Brock Lesnar needs to be presented the way he was presented, right? And CM Punk's out there being like, Brock Lesnar's allowed to have sponsors on his shorts. Why can't I? Well, let's see. Brock Lesnar draws 6 million. You barely draw 2. Nobody gives a fuck about you. Nobody knows who you are. Brock Lesnar is a former UFC champion. You're a former UFC jobber, right? Brock Lesnar looks the way he does. You look the way you do. Brock Lesnar has the presence he does. You have the presence that you do, right? That's why Brock Lesnar, we bend the rules for the Brock Lesnars of the world. We bend the rules for the Logan Pauls. We bend the rules for the people that might actually attract some viewers. And I'm not saying Logan Paul is this incredible wrestler, even though I think he is, but Logan Paul's a draw. People will watch because Logan Paul's there, right? And that's what I'm getting at, motherfuckers. Cody Rhodes, every attribute that I've mentioned in the last minute and a half, Cody Rhodes doesn't have. So with that being said, take it as it is. Take it for what it's worth. But the reality is, Cody Rhodes is not a good world champion. And as a matter of fact, he is the worst world champion of all time. Cuckwads.